Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. And now the Friday Crime Report. Columbia, South Carolina, Sunday, May 28th, 8 o'clock p.m. Cyrus Carmack-Belton was a 14-year-old middle school student. He went to an Express Mart in his area. He perused a few items in the store, but ultimately chose not to buy anything, so he put the items back. But the owner of the store, along with his nefarious son, thought they saw an opportunity to act on their racist impulses. The owner of the store, Rick Chow, with no provocation or justification, decided to start a verbal confrontation with this child. The pretense from Chow was that he said the child had stolen something. He falsely accused the child of theft, and then Chow's son decided to get involved. Cyrus, recognizing that this was a setup, left the store. But the two assailants followed him, with at least one of them armed. Cyrus ran, and they chased after him. At one point, the child fell and lost a shoe. The chase went across the street from the store, and that was when Chow decided to shoot the child in the back, killing him. Chow made no attempt to help the child that he had shot. A passerby tried to do chest compressions, but it was already too late. The killers made no attempt to help the child or to summon any sort of assistance or medical aid. This was not merely a murder, it was a lynching. From Trayvon Martin to Ahmaud Arbery, we see time and again black people who are attacked, chased, and gunned down by some anti-black racist who thinks that they're going to be protected by the dominant society. People who think that they are or want to be honorary members of the oppressor class. Now in this case, the public got turned up and the authorities felt they had to do something, but what they did was only a half measure. The killer was arrested the day after the murder and charged with the appropriate crime, which is murder, but so far, I haven't seen where his son was charged. They both accosted, threatened, and pursued this child. The murder of Ahmaud Arbery went down just like this murder did, and the third good old boy in that case, the one who shot the video of Ahmaud Arbery being lynched, he got charged and convicted right alongside his other racist pals because he was as guilty as they were. What we're seeing going down with this Rick Chow character, however, are the authorities doing a half measure. Well, half justice isn't justice at all. We have the white media already trying to stick up for the killer. Obviously, they haven't been able to find any dirt on the victim. So they're basically repeating whatever the killer says happened. One dubious claim is that they shot the child in the back because one of them said he had a gun. The police are saying that there was a gun recovered, but it was near the child. Wasn't in his hand and wasn't on his person. That seems more than a little suspicious to me. Now, assuming that the gun wasn't planted by one of the assailants, their story still doesn't hold up. If the child had a gun on him, why didn't he use it at the store? Or when he saw the killers chasing him? It smells to me more like the gun was planted by the assailants because clearly they're trying to manufacture a story to fit the circumstance of the murder. They're trying to manufacture a self-defense claim. And they know that the security footage at the store shows Cyrus didn't threaten either one of them or lay a hand on them, and it also shows he didn't steal anything either. But for the sake of argument, let's say the gun was Cyrus's. He didn't draw the gun in the store, nor did he draw it when he was running for his life either. Even the police had to admit that fact. He was no danger to any of his killers. This was not self-defense, it was a crime of opportunity. And it's not the first time that this killer, Rick Chow, has done something like this. You won't be surprised to learn that he's been involved in at least 2 previous shootings. And in each case, he's always claimed that it was some sort of shoplifter that he was shooting at. In 2015, he fired 6 shots at a vehicle that was leaving his store. Gee, kinda like shooting a child in the back when he runs away from you. He claimed that somebody had been stealing items. In 2018, he shot someone after claiming they had shoplifted from his store. The authorities refused to do anything about Chow in either one of those incidents, so this guy has been running around, shooting at people, and looking for a reason to shoot at people, black people in particular. But there are also, of course, other factors at work here. A large part of the reason that this murder happened is because for the last few years, there's been this deliberate false racial hysteria created by people like Juju Chang, spreading lies that the black community is targeting Asians. It's the result of white supremacist doctrines like the model minority idea. But it also happened because there's a strong vein of anti-black racism that nobody wants to talk about. You probably all know about the 1991 murder of Latasha Harlins, a 15-year-old black girl. She was gunned down in a convenience store by the owner, a woman named Soon Ja-do. The accusation was made that the child had tried to steal a bottle of juice that time. It seems like that's the all-purpose excuse for killing black children in convenience stores. The police reviewed the security video along with accounts from other teenagers who were there, and they concluded that Latasha was going to pay for the juice. She wasn't stealing anything. But the store owner accosted the child, grabbed her clothing and her backpack, and under attack, Latasha defended herself. The killer then walked off, went behind the counter, grabbed a gun, and shot the child dead. And just as with the murder of Cyrus Belton, there was also a secondary person involved in the killing of Latasha Harlins as well. The killer's husband tried to manufacture a phony narrative on the spot when he called the police and claimed it was an attempted robbery. See, they were trying to get out in front of this one. But the security footage, along with the witnesses' accounts, made it clear this was murder. The killer, Ja-do, claimed that she was acting in self-defense. Gee, where have we heard that before? But the evidence was overwhelming that it was intentional and deliberate and completely and thoroughly unjustified. Latasha Harlins' murderer was convicted of manslaughter. However, the judge, Joyce Carlin, ignored the jury entirely and decided that she was going to let the killer go with mere probation and a $500 fine. Probation for what a jury ruled was manslaughter, but just to show that all those white supremacists in California were on code, when the sentence was appealed, the appeals court unanimously sided with the corrupt judge's sentence and said, well, nothing more than a fine and probation is necessary here. This happened 30 years ago in liberal California. You had a murder that was aided and abetted by the state. We'll continue with the moment of truth in just a moment, but first, a word from the official sponsor of Black Empowerment, Power Tools. There's no telling when something's going to come up, so make sure you carry your power tools at all times. You never know when you're going to need to bring the hammer down, or when you'll have some trash that needs to be blown away, or some obstacle that requires cutting down. Don't get caught empty-handed. Keep your hammer close by. Keep that leaf blower at the ready, and always carry your steel. Power tools, because no matter what your day job or side hustle may be, there's no excuse for not being ready to put in some work. As black people, we have a right to be safe, and when racists in the DA's office or on the bench abuse their position to nullify jury verdicts for the sake of making us into targets, that is lawlessness. And the black community has a right and a duty to see justice is done. So there's plenty of precedent for this. When Peter Liang was charged for the murder of Akai Gurley, instead of there being nationwide condemnation of him, instead we saw nationwide demonstrations of support from the Asian American community. This was completely unprecedented. Something like this had never happened before. There have been numerous instances where Asian Americans have been killed, in many cases by white assailants, and the killers were not punished. Michael Cho is an example. He was killed by police in 2008. There was no nationwide shows of support for him. More recently, in 2018, Chong Moai Yang was killed. 2 white men have been arrested for it. These were just 2 examples of Asian Americans who were the victims of violent crime. And yet there was not anywhere near the same level of support or outpouring of public demonstration on the behalf of those 2 murder victims. Peter Liang murdered somebody. There's not even a question about it. So why was there so much support for him from his community for a man who everyone agreed was guilty of what he had been charged with? It's because there were a lot of people in the community who see themselves as having white privilege of a sort. The protests for Peter Liang were not because anyone thought that there was some injustice to his being charged. It was because his being charged was seen as a threat to the status and class that certain people see themselves as having. Now, as the black community, we've heard a lot about Stop Asian Hate, and the white media's done their best to manufacture a phony narrative that black people are targeting Asians. And that lie might have gained more traction, except that almost on a weekly basis, you had a mass shooting of Asians, either committed by some white supremacist who was obsessed with Asian women, or, in many cases, by Asians themselves, many of whom are suspected to be gang members. We've seen a couple of incidents like those recently. You've had black people who wanted to be allies to the Asian community during these times and stand in solidarity with them. Stop Asian Hate. Well, I want to know where the Asians are to stand with the black community now. Where are the Asian voices at to condemn Rick Chow? I'm not seeing them. People like Juju Chang say that silence is violence. So what does she call this? Rick Chow is a murderer. Everyone can agree on that, but his son must also be charged. The family's attorney is making the usual sounds about black lives not having any value in this society, but that's weak sauce. Sleaze, Merritt, and Mushmouth Crump have done the same song and dance. I'm looking at them with the side eye, because what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is not the same kind of verve and intensity that we had from, say, the family of Ahmaud Arbery. We know when a family is actually out for justice, and when perhaps somebody might be thinking they're playing some sort of angle. So I'm going to be cautiously optimistic on this one. That's just a reality. The DA out there needs to be pressured to bring charges against Chow's son as well, because he's every bit as guilty as his felonious father. And beyond that, there must be an acknowledgement that anti-black racism is not just practiced by white supremacists. There are also many in the Asian community who practice anti-black racism as well, because it's well understood by every immigrant group since the 19th century that society will allow non-black people to kill black people with impunity. The racial hierarchy in the United States could never have stood this long or this strongly without having a lot of non-white support for it. That's the dirty little secret that nobody likes to talk about. Even if white supremacy doesn't let you be at the top of the pyramid, for some folks, promoting or taking part in anti-black violence shows that they're loyal to the place that the dominant society has assigned them. Well, it's up to us to be bold in telling the truth and uncompromising in holding evil to account, be it the police or these street-level thugs or the DA's office or the judges. We must teach everyone that we are not soft targets, and that harming black people isn't some crime that you get to commit and then just saunter off as if nothing had happened. Justice is not up for a debate. And that's this week's Friday Crime Report. Keep your eyes open and stay on alert, because there's a lot worse criminals out there than the ones the white corporate media chooses to show you. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. David Green, Wesley Monroe, William, Kenneth Johnson, and Darren Nooks. Salute to them, and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.